Hello everybody, it's Foo here, and today I want to consider some of the most overlooked Pokemon, because these are the Pokemon that Game Freak themselves overlooked when they were making Pokemon Sword and Shield. The true victims of the Thanos snap that was Dexit. I want to talk about the best Pokemon that are unobtainable in Pokemon Sword and Shield. And that's even now after we've had 2 DLC updates which have brought some of the old Pokemon back into these games. We still can't get some of the Pokemon. I recently did a poll on my channel and it seems as though most people don't think we'll be getting these Pokemon in Sword and Shield at all. I mean, we've got new games coming out relatively soon and we haven't heard anything about updates that would patch these Pokemon into Sword and Shield, so I think it's unlikely too, which is a real shame. I'm going to talk about 5 that I think are really good notable Pokemon that aren't in these games before landing on the one Pokemon that I think is the best Pokemon not in these games, and it's a real shame that we haven't got our hands on it. So let's get started. First off, Gliscor. Now this Pokemon is quite a fan favorite. It's a really cool Pokemon, very well designed, and is really neat to use in battle. It's a ground flying type, and we do actually already have a ground flying type in Sword and Shield in Landorus, but Gliscor could definitely add some variety because we see Landorus all the time. It's a very good Pokemon, but Gliscor is also a very good Pokemon and it can do a number of things that Landorus can't. Notably, it's very bulky. It's got a huge defense stat, and usually people make it quite specially defensive too, so even though it's 4 times weak to Ice Beam, it miraculously is able to take Ice Beams for some reason. This Pokemon is insane. It also has the Poison Heal ability, which isn't in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now this is such a good ability because if you give your Gliscor a Toxic Orb, it will get poisoned and then it will be healing a ton of health each turn while also being immune to any other status, so it means that it can't be put to sleep or anything like that. It's such a good ability and we don't have that at all in Pokemon Sword and Shield at the moment. That's always annoying for me because I like doing tricksy skill swap shenanigans which could be pretty interesting, so I'd definitely like to see it just for that reason. And it gets access to Roost, which is something that Landorus cannot boast, so Gliscor could definitely be a really interesting bulky ground flying type that we don't currently have in the game. Offensively, it's quite similar to Landorus but quite a bit weaker. Its attack stat is lower though still usable. It's obviously got the same stabs as Landorus, but it does have slight differences because it gets access to Ice Fang, which is pretty neat. It means that in the matchup with a Landorus, it would probably win 1v1 because it does have that Ice Fang, which is 4 times super effective. It does still have access to Swords Dance, but also, interestingly, I mentioned its Poison Heal ability, it does get Hyper Cutter too. This means that your attack stat can't be dropped. So in doubles where Intimidate is very common, you could run Hyper Cutter. Again, if you run into those Landorus, you could take them out pretty easily with your Ice Fangs. If you run into Incineroar, you've got your Stab ground type moves to use against that. So it could be a really interesting way to run a more offensive Gliscor in doubles. And then on top of all of this, we're talking about bringing Gliscor into Generation 8. Obviously, this is the Dynamax generation, and that allows it to use its Stab Max Quake, which gives it special defense boosts. I've already said it's very physically defensive. Getting special defense boosts would make it insanely bulky, but also very importantly, Stab Max Airstream. This is one of, if not the best max move in the game because it boosts your speed, and getting a really fast, really bulky Gliscor is a terrifying idea because once your Dynamax is over, you've got some special defense boosts, you're incredibly bulky and you're faster. You can just roost off any damage that you might receive. So that's really cool. Also, in the Isle of Armor DLC, we got access to some new tutor moves, and I'm pretty sure that Gliscor will get access to dual wing beat. So currently its best flying type moves are things like Fly, which isn't great, or Acrobatics, but generally you're running Toxic Orb, so it's a weak Acrobatics. Acrobatics is more powerful if you're not holding an item, but this thing kind of needs to hold an item. And then there are things like Wing Attack and Aerial Ace, which are also really weak. So having dual wing beat would be a huge buff for Gliscor. All of these reasons mean that Gliscor would be a really cool addition to Pokemon Sword and Shield. I think it would definitely see use, and it's just really unfortunate that we don't have it at the moment. The next one I want to talk about is Slaking. Slaking is really cool. His stats are insane, but he does have the really bad Truant ability, which means he can only attack every other turn. Now, we've got a similar Pokemon like this that's got insane stats but a bad ability in Regigigas. And Regigigas is actually having the time of its life in Pokemon Sword and Shield. This is the first game that Regigigas has actually been strong in competitive. And that is because of the addition of Wheezing with neutralizing gas, which basically can wipe Regigigas's bad ability and it can do a ton of work. And the exact same could be said for Slaking. If you pair Slaking with Wheezing, it would be super fast, super powerful, it's already super bulky, and it just would be a force to be reckoned with. Now, do we really need Slaking if we've already got Regigigas? Well, maybe we don't need it, but it does offer some things that Regigigas can't do. It's got higher HP, although it does have lower special defense, so overall it's probably less bulky on the special defensive side, but maybe can take physical hits a little bit better. But also it gets recovery and slack off, and that's definitely something that Regigigas doesn't have. If Regigigas had recovery, it would be even more terrifying because it is so bulky. So having like a Regigigas with recovery, that's almost what you'd be getting with Slaking, and that is a terrifying thought. It's also got some interesting utility in Taunt and Encore that Regigigas does not have. And really the biggest difference is that it does get access to bulk up, so even when you're not Dynamax, you can get some defense boosts there, you can get attack boosts, and then be even more terrifying. So that is a really scary prospect. I just would like to see Slaking because really, since its introduction, it's been pretty bad in competitive. Truant is such a handicap for it, and it would just be lovely to see it actually being used to good effect in a game, and this is probably the first game that could happen, but it's not in the game, which is really, really sad. Okay, let's move on to some more, and I want to talk about the starters, but there are kind of too many to go through all of them. So we've got 4 generations of starters in Pokemon Sword and Shield, but we still have 4 generations that are not. Those are generations 2, 4, 5, and 6. The most notable ones, in my opinion, although most of them are notable, aside from Meganium. God, that Pokemon needs some buffs. The most notable are Serperior, because it has the contrary ability. Such a good ability, especially in the Dynamax format. So many Dynamax moves drop your stats, and a contrary Pokemon would just be getting stronger. So that would be really fantastic in this game. Also, I had this idea of pairing it with Eerie Pulse Regieleki for really fast special attack boosts, which could be very, very fun. But it lost Hidden Power, which is a pretty big deal for Serperior because it doesn't get very good coverage at all. So I think Serperior would be really cool to see, but actually I'm not sure how effective it would be. Another one would be Empoleon, because it potentially gets Flip Turn from the Isle of Armor DLC move tutor, which could make it really great utility in the singles format with access to Defog to remove hazards, or just generally for momentum on more offensive sets. But also in Dynamax formats, it could use Max Steel Spike as a very powerful special Max Steel Spike, giving it defense boost. It's already got high special defense. So again, it could get really, really bulky and just be like a bulky offensive Pokemon, which would be very fun to use. But I think that the starter that is the biggest omission, and I kind of can't believe it's not in the game, is Greninja. It's very embarrassing for the Pokemon Company, I think, because like literally a couple of months after Pokemon Sword and Shield dropped, Greninja was voted Pokemon of the Year by popular vote. And so you've kind of just made new games without the most popular Pokemon in them, which is pretty funny. But Greninja, I think, would be fantastic in Pokemon Sword and Shield for so many other reasons too. Mainly because it has the Protean ability. We only have Libero in the game so far on Cinderace, which is a physical Pokemon. Greninja is faster than Cinderace, and importantly, it's a special attacker. So that means that it won't be affected by Intimidate, and it could be very strong. Cinderace is very fast and it's a powerful physical attacker, but if the opponent does have Intimidators, it gets weaker very quickly. Greninja wouldn't have that problem. Also, in Dynamax formats, it would use Max Darkness, which is a great special max move because it drops the opponent's special defense, meaning your follow-up attacks would be even stronger. You could then follow up with Max Geyser to do even more damage. It's got great coverage because you can go for Max Hailstorm. Stab Max Hailstorm is so good, obviously with Protean turning you into an Ice type. And then it's got some really good coverage moves, like Grass Knot would turn into max overgrowth, so it could take on other water types, which is fantastic. I really think Greninja has so much to offer in this format, and it would be such a great Pokemon. And that's without even talking about the Battle Bond set. Nothing has really changed so much with the Battle Bond set, but if you could have Ash Greninja Dynamaxed, that is really quite terrifying. So yeah, this Pokemon would obviously be really good, and it's really popular. I just kind of expected to see it in these games, but it's not materialized yet. Okay, so let's move on to 2 more Pokemon before I say which one I think is the best. And these ones are a bit more niche, but just ones I think would be really interesting. One of them is Oricorio. Oricorio was introduced in Generation 7 with 4 forms, and it's pretty random, but I think it's super underrated, mainly because of its Dancer ability, which is underexplored in my opinion. It basically copies any dancing moves that any of the Pokemon on the field go for. What you could do in Pokemon Sword and Shield is pair it up with a really fast Pheromosa, Dynamax your Oricorio. Pheromosa goes for Quiver Dance right at the beginning of the turn because it's so fast. Oricorio copies that straight away, and because now in Pokemon Sword and Shield we have dynamic speed changes, it means that Oricorio would get that speed boost straight away from Quiver Dance, and then it would move before the opponent, and you could go for one of your powerful max moves, probably max Airstream, because as I've said, it's super powerful. You'd hit the opponent very hard. You've already got a +1 special attack boost from copying Pheromosa's Quiver Dance, and then you get another speed boost. So this thing at the end of the first turn would have done a ton of damage to the opponent and got 2 speed boosts. I think that is just so cool. I also like that it's got its different forms, so you could experiment which one is the best. And I just would really like to get my hands on this Pokemon. I think there's so much potential there, and I think it could do better in this metagame than any of the others it's been in so far. Moving on to another relatively niche pick is Minior. Now Minior is a really interesting Pokemon with 2 forms. It starts in its Meteor form, and then when it drops below half health, it sheds its shell, becomes the core form, and that makes it insanely fast and pretty powerful too. And it gets access to Shell Smash. So generally that's what you do. You Shell Smash in this bulkier form, and then you become the core form, get a ton faster, get your offenses, and after the Shell Smash, you're ready to sweep. I think it would be good in Sword and Shield again because its max move options are really good. You can boost your speed even more with max Airstream, and you can go for max Rockfalls, which is a really great max move just in terms of coverage, but also setting up Sand to break opponents' Focus Sashes and boost your special defense, I think is really great. It does have very good coverage options too in Earthquake, which could turn into Max Quake. And there are some other cool things to note too. At the moment, Venusaur is like everywhere. It's one of the most commonly used Pokemon in VGC. And against those Sun teams, what's neat is that Minior can't be statused in its Meteor form. So the Venusaur won't be able to put you to sleep with a sleep powder, and you should be able to get a Shell Smash off if you want to, or something like that. So I think that would be really cool to see. Also, we got Meteor Beam added in the Isle of Armor DLC, so you could definitely try some Power Herb Meteor Beam sets, because if Minior didn't get Meteor Beam, I'm not quite sure what we're doing here. That definitely should never come to pass. Like, Minior is the definition of a Pokemon that should learn Meteor Beam. It is a Meteor. It has a Meteor form. So I really want to see that. I think it could be really powerful and very fun to use. Plus, you get to pick which is your favorite color, and that's always fun. So let's talk about the best Pokemon not in the games now, and I may be biased about this, but I really think it's Murkrow. Yes, Murkrow, not Honchkrow. Honchkrow is a really cool Pokemon and very good too, and I'm sure that it would be like crazy busted with max Airstreams boosting your speed, and if you get a KO, you could get a Moxie boost too, which would boost your attack. That sounds very scary. But I want to talk about Murkrow because I think it would be even more viable than Honchkrow. And that's mainly because of Prankster Tailwind. Now, it's always had Prankster Tailwind. Prankster is such a fantastic ability that means that your utility moves get priority, so they move right at the beginning of the turn. But what's different in Sword and Shield is we now have these dynamic speed changes. So if your Murkrow sets up Tailwind, it will boost your partner's speed straight away, and they'll move basically straight after Murkrow's done that, which we haven't seen in previous games. So we do see the strategy used quite a lot already with Whimsicott and Tornadus, making them some of the most used Pokemon in VGC. And I think Murkrow actually has a lot to offer as an alternative to these two, which is nice just because they are so ubiquitous and they are everywhere. Just having an alternative to them would be nice, especially if that Pokemon is a cute, mischievous looking crow. I just love it so much. The pros for using Murkrow over these other Tailwind users is that it is dark type, so it can't be taunted by other prankster Pokemon. It's immune to prankster moves itself, so that gives it one up against Whimsicott and Tornadus because they are both prankster Pokemon. They aren't able to use their prankster moves against Murkrow, while it could still use its prankster moves against them. So that's really cool. Additionally, it gets stab foul play, so you don't have to invest in Murkrow's offensive stats for it to still have damage output. If you're attacking a physical attacker, that foul play can do a ton of damage. I'm really thinking that like back in the early days of Sword and Shield VGC, when Dragapult was everywhere, this Pokemon would have done so much. It could set up Tailwind and then threaten Dragapult straight away. It would have been very useful. Other reasons to use Murkrow are its access to Prankster Quash, which has always been good. You basically target one of the opponent's Pokemon and they move right at the end of the turn. That speed control is neat because it works if your opponent's faster than you, but also in Trick Room, if the opponent will move before you in Trick Room, you can still postpone their moves, so that's another great option. And it still gets access to great utility in Taunt, Feather Dance, Thunder Wave, and has some really niche stuff too, like Prankster Mirror Move is a really cool thing that you can use, as well as Perish Song. And we've seen quite a bit of Perish Song used in the VGC format. I think it could be a very neat way of closing out battles. If you're able to get some early KOs, the opponent only has 2 Pokemon left, go for that Perish Song and that can be your win condition. So Murkrow has a ton of utility, as well as that access to Prankster Tailwind, and also the dark typing making it immune to prankster moves. So I really think that we could have seen a lot of use with this Pokemon, but it's not in the game, which is tragic, and I am very upset about this. So those are what I consider to be the best Pokemon not in Sword and Shield. This is completely subjective. There are tons of amazing Pokemon that I haven't mentioned, things like Staraptor and Infernape. Obviously there are tons more, so let me know in the comments section which Pokemon you want to see return to this game the most. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing for more content. I don't have a regular upload schedule, so click the bell if you don't want to miss a video, and also follow me on Twitter at SJA900. All that's left to be said is I've been Foo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.